All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bear Archery podcast. That's right. We're going through a name change. Thank you guys so much for all of your support through the years of hosting the Bear Archery Hunting 101 podcast. But we just felt like it was time to change the name to the Bear Archery podcast. We will still be doing 101 series. We'll still be hosting, Deer 101, Trad 101, Elk 101, the 101 type series to really teach you from the basics how to hunt different species, how to use different weapons. However, we really want to focus on the Bear Archery brand as a whole, on growing the archery community as a whole. Fred Bear and his vision was that archery was for everybody. So whether you shoot a bear bow or not, the mission behind this podcast is to continue to push the envelope and to grow the archery community. So we're going through a name change. However, the podcast will still be brought to you and presented by ScentLock. We'll still do 101 series. We're still going to have on some of your favorite guests from over the years. We're still going to be doing a lot of exciting things. We'll still be doing Cook Wild once a month with Mike Castaneda. We're going to be introducing a new series called Train Wild, just trying to give you resources to be a better human, to live a healthier, happier lifestyle. We've got a lot of things in the works. So by no means is the podcast going away. We're just simply going away from the Hunting 101 name and making it the Bear Archery podcast. So I thought no better time than now to have the head honcho, Mr. Jon Lene, on. Jon is the president at Bear Archery, and we just talk about his tenure at Bear, what he has seen change at Bear Archery, and where he sees the Bear Archery brand going in the future. Some things that he wants to see done with the brand and with the product line. Guys, it's a really good episode. Jon is an awesome guy, and we just kind of talk about the history and the legacy that is Bear Archery and where the brand is going to be headed in the future. Guys, stay right here tuned in. I can't thank you enough for your support over the years of the Hunting 101 podcast, and I look forward to now bringing you the Bear Archery podcast.
With over 90 years of innovation, Bear Archery continues pushing toward the goal of founder Fred Bear, making archery accessible for all. Fred believed the history of the bow and arrow were the history of mankind, and everyone should immerse themselves in the outdoor experience. Welcome to the Bear Archery Podcast, where the mission is simple: to hunt, grow, and inspire others.
Guys, I am never going to tell you that you have to be 10% body fat or that you have to be able to run a marathon in order to enjoy hunting. You don't even have to be able to complete a CrossFit workout. However, if I want to be able to hunt for a long time and enjoy the great outdoors and continue to chase wild game, then I have to do some things to remain healthy. Why? Well, because I can't bow hunt when I'm 80, 85 if I don't take care of myself now. Guys, First Form makes some of the best supplements that you will ever find. I got so tired of overpaying for watered down, mediocre supplements just because they were branded for the outdoors. First Form is one of the biggest and best supplement companies in the world. The best news is they care about outdoorsmen and they care about hunters because they are outdoorsmen and they are hunters. So guys, I would highly encourage you to check out First Form. Not just for your professional athletes, not just for the guys who are constantly in the gym working out, not just for the guys who want to get as big and as fit as they possibly can, but for everyday guys who just want to be around to see their kids graduate, for everyday mom and dads who just want to be healthy and live a happy lifestyle and enjoy time with their kids, for the everyday bow hunter that just wants to ensure they do some things to stay healthy and be able to hunt longer. There are some products for everyday health that everybody should be taking, whether you're an athlete or not. So guys, click the link in the description of this episode to start shopping some of my favorite products from First Form. And guys, I would highly encourage you to start doing some things to ensure your future for bow hunting, to ensure that you're able to enjoy the sport that you love so much for a long time. Guys, I would love to help you out. If you have any questions about what I take or why I take it, shoot me an email, thehunting101podcast@gmail.com. I would love to give you some advice on what products would be a good fit for you and to help you reach your goals. So guys, definitely click the link in the description of this episode to start shopping some of my favorite everyday health products from First Form, some of my favorite proteins, vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, some of the favorite products that anybody and everybody should be taking in order to live a happier, healthier lifestyle. But guys, don't hesitate to reach out and ask me any kind of questions. I would love to help you and love to see you live your happiest, healthiest life. All right, everyone. So you might have heard the new intro. You might have heard the new name already. But the guys at Bear Archery and myself have decided to change the name of the podcast. So we've decided to go away from Bear Archery's Hunting 101 and just make it the Bear Archery podcast. And we're going to kind of get into all the reasonings why behind that. But I figured with this kind of rebrand of the show, might as well have the head honcho, the man in the driver's seat on to talk about everything that's going on over at Bear Archery. So we've got Jon Lene, the president of Bear Archery. Jon, how are you, man?
Good. How are you doing, Dylan?
Wonderful, dude. As you know, we are, just got done with ATA and, kind of in the heart of show season. So just traveling a lot, staying busy, but I'm excited to kind of talk about just the history of Bear Archery and the forward movement. Where is Bear headed? And so no better man to do that with than Mr. Lene. So
I appreciate it. Hope I can live up to the expectation there.
So before we jump in, you've been on the show before, but give us a background to you. Because I think it's important, that transition to Bear Archery, it's important to know where you came from. So
Sure.
Where'd you start in the industry and how'd you get to Bear?
Absolutely. So I'm coming up on year 20 here. So it's flown by. I can't believe it's been quite this quick. But I mean, when I started in this industry, didn't have kids. I've got a 17-year-old now, and it's amazing. But I started on the archery side. I started with PSE back in early 2000s, and had the privilege of working with them for a little over a decade as both a regional sales guy and then also eventually as a national sales manager there. So enjoyed my time there. Great company, great history as well. Enjoyed the time under a guy like Pete Shepley, who, his history in this industry and knowledge and patents and everything was incredible, and met a lot of great people there. And after that time, I was offered a job with a private equity group called Arcus, and we went out and built that group of both archery and kind of general hunting stuff, a bow company, some broadheads, dead downwind tinks, some general hunting stuff. So, totally different side of the business. I'd gone from private to private equity, a different space, but learned a ton in the almost 5 years that I signed up for that one. And then just about the time that, that thing was kind of coming to an end, or where we'd kind of said we were going to be coming to an end on that one, this opportunity came up. And, I've told this story a few times. It's kind of a funny one, but I got a call from the CEO here at Escalade, which is our parent company, and at that time my boss. And, my name had come up. I don't know who he had talked to. There's some people in the industry, and just said, "Hey, you got any interest in coming and running the Bear side of the business?" And I'm like, man, that's an awesome brand. It's a brand that even as a competitor, I was unbelievably fond of, and a huge follower of Fred Bear. And so I thought, man, this is a really cool opportunity. It was perfect timing that the Arcus thing, I had kind of said 5 years was my deal there. And I said, yeah, I'd love to come talk to you. And he said, well, when can you fly in? And I said, well, I live here in town. He said, no, I live here in town. And I'm like, no, really, I live in Newburgh. And he said, well, I live in Newburgh. And they had no clue that I was 10 miles from the home office. So I drove in the next day, came to the office. It was during COVID. There were only 4 people in the building. They were in the middle of a remodel. We met and just really hit it off. And I think that, their understanding of needing somebody that had, one, the vision for, but also the respect for the brand and for the history and legacy of the brand. And like I said, it was a blessing, an absolute blessing, perfect timing. I'd spent so many years on the road, away from kids and away from family, that this was, in my backyard, and it's turned out to be just really an absolute blessing. So, and that brings us almost 4 years later, and here I am.
And that's what so many people in the outdoor industry, you have to tip your hat to the history and legacy that's found at Bear Archery. You have to. And Jon, I would be lying if I said, sure, you might pick up a Bear and just not like the bow. That's fine. You might choose another bow brand over a Bear. That's fine. We all have personal preferences. That's why there's other bow brands. But even if that's the case, you still have to appreciate the legacy and history that is Bear Archery. Like you just have to. And that's part of the reason for the name change. We just wanted to, I think that the word hunting 101 sometimes deters people because they're like, well, I've hunted my whole life. I don't need to listen to a 101 level podcast. And vice versa. Sometimes it creates the confusion. It kind of muddies the water. Well, is it Hunting 101's podcast sponsored by Bear? Just so everybody knows, this has always been Bear Archery's podcast. And so we just kind of want that name more out there so people know what this podcast represents. And, I by no means am running the show like Mr. Lene, but it's such an honor. It's such a privilege to be able to represent a company with 90 years of history and legacy and innovative change and really moving the needle for archery as a whole. And so, and you've had the pleasure of, you mentioned Pete Shepley, that's another guy. You have to admire the history and legacy that is Pete Shepley. Did you ever have the pleasure of meeting Fred Bear?
I did not. So, I was just I maybe look old because of this gray in my beard, but that's a mixture of kids in this job. But I'm not old enough to have had that pleasure. I was only 6 years old when Mr. Bear passed away. But my father-in-law was a good friend of Fred's, and so I've got some cool stuff out at the house from their interactions and the years that they spent together. And then actually, you mentioned Pete. I got to spend a couple hours with Pete at the ATA show, and we hadn't connected in a couple months. And the same thing goes for your comments there on the respect, because Pete was a major competitor of Bear once he got in the industry, but Pete had nothing but admiration for Fred and what he did for bow hunting and archery. And we talked about it during our time there at ATA, and he was talking about some funny stories of Fred doing some stuff to his camper at one of the Anderson archery shoots and some other stuff, playing pranks on him. But he had nothing but good things to say about what Fred and what Bear Archery did for the industry as a whole, not just for Bear Archery. And I think, like the podcast, yes, it may have Bear Archery attached to it, but I think this podcast has been a great opportunity to open subjects outside of just Bear, whether it's general hunting or the archery that may include people that aren't us, right? Or people that aren't just into Bear products. I think that was Fred Bear's goal. I think that should be our goal as stewards of this sport. How do we get people involved? I mean, I want them all shooting Bear and Trophy Ridge and Cajun products. Don't get me wrong. But we're not in a super growing industry. And if we're not kind of working together, if we're against each other, this thing's never going to grow.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. And that's what, and you obviously you've had the benefit as well, but you talk to guys who knew Fred, and there was no way you could hate him. Just the way he carried himself, the way he represented archery as a whole, even outside of Bear Archery, the way that he represented archery was something that had to be respected. I mean, just the kindness and generosity and the way he gave back and the way he supported the growth of archery as a whole. And it had to be respected, I mean, it just had to be. There was no other way around it. And that's why it's such an iconic brand still today. And I've told, everybody that I talk to inside the Bear Archery company, whether it's an engineer or whether it's a marketing director or whether it's the head honcho, good job. Like, you guys are doing a phenomenal job. And I can say with some certainty that I believe that Fred would be proud of the way that this company is ran, of the direction that it's going, that you guys haven't abandoned your roots, that my kids can still buy a Bear bow, that my father can still buy a Bear bow, that archery is still for everybody. So really good job, guys.
Well, I appreciate that, Dylan. And I'll say it's a tough task. I know we don't always get it right. But I'll say that is probably the biggest challenge is keeping that legacy and keeping what the company was founded on while still keeping up with today's world. And I mean, it is harder to build products in the U.S. It is hard to make them cost effective, to find people to work. Everything about it's a challenge, and the consumers just see one side of it. But yes, we build high-end products. We build $400 sights and $1,200 bows, but we also feel like having that option, like you said. I mean, if you want to get your kid a $50 Bear Brave to fling arrows in the backyard to get into it, but then you want to buy a $1,200 bow, we have that option, and we don't cut any corners whether we're building that $100 bow or building the $1,200 bow, and it's becoming tougher and tougher. But we really feel like that's one thing we do exceptionally well, and something that we don't want to get away from.
You guys, if you guys don't believe that they don't cut corners, go to the factory in Gainesville. Like, it is the most insane place I've ever been in my lifetime. It was mind blowing. And John, we went on a 10-day vacation with the entire family down to Florida, and we all get back, and my kids are like, "What was your favorite part, Dad?" "Oh, when we saw that shark, when we went swimming in the ocean, when we, all this cool stuff." And I said, 100% the Bear Archery Factory. And they're like, "Are you serious, Dad?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, that was so cool. So guys, and if you don't believe them, pick up like an Alaskan XT or a Whitetail Max, and I promise you I could blindfold you, and that bow will perform with any other flagship on the market. They don't cut corners, and that's what's so special about Bear. The flagships are great, but that mid-level bow, oh my gosh, the way that shoots for that price point is just unbelievable. But I've said it once, and I've said it 100 times. My favorite part about Bear is that when I open a catalog at the first of the year, I can go, "Oh, look, there's new bows for my kids. Oh, look, there's new bows for my wife. There's me a new recurve. There's me a new flagship. There's me a new mid-level bow. Oh, my dad who can no longer pull a bow back, there's him a new crossbow." Like, there's something for everybody. And so, and that's what,
it's tough.
And you meant, yeah, it is. I'm sure it is.
It's tough.
Where other companies are focused on one flagship for the year, you guys are pumping out, 2 new mid-level bows, a new flagship, a new crossbow, 2 new recurves. I mean, it's unbelievable what your team accomplishes over there.
We appreciate that. And I say that when you say team, I've noticed that just in the 4 years I've been here, is that I inherited a really good team that just lucky to be a part of. And I think that, hopefully we're really gelling, every year a little bit more than we did the year before. But awesome team, everybody from sales to customer service to product management. You mentioned that, your tour in Gainesville, and, that's 100% Neil Bice and his team. One of my, greatest privileges in this job is having a guy like Neil run that facility down there. And, a guy that's been there for almost 46 years and is really the last remaining tie to Bear Archery and Fred Bear. And he makes that experience what it is when you go down there and take a tour. I mean, if you wanted 10 days, he'd have taken 10 days of your time to tour that facility.
Yeah.
But, we get the opportunity to have special groups down there and to do VIP experiences. And Neil just does a exceptional job, but he really shows how we're taking the history and the legacy of the brand and moving it forward. I mean, you have to be relevant. People want cool. They want techie. They want, attractive. And sometimes that doesn't always jive with a 1960s recurve. So how do you blend that? And I think that as a company, we've done a pretty good job, and obviously there's growth where we want to keep going, but I'd say
that's something that, people do want cool, especially kids. And that's something that you guys have really turned the tide on those beginner level kids bows, making them look cool. Used to you buy a kid a bow and they're like, "Yeah, but it's a toy," like they could just tell. Mm-hmm. But now, I mean, with the legit and with the, the Cruiser G2s, like those bows look really cool. And now it's not like a cheap kid's bow. It's like, man, this bow looks like Dad's bow. Like, and it's a cool bow. But man, back on Neil, like Neil is just unbelievable. And I tell people, like, I never got to meet Fred, obviously, either, but he had to be like Neil. I mean, when Neil walks around the factory, it blew my mind. He's just walking through there and he says, "Hey, Beth, how you doing?" She's been here for 42 years. "Hey, Bill, how you doing?" Mm-hmm. Knew everybody by name. And I was just like, wow. Yeah. And when I say everybody, there's 100 employees down there?
No, we've got over that. Yeah, we've been upwards of double that, just depending on the product and the year
Yeah.
and what's going on. But no, Neil, I think that's a reflection of his leadership and that facility and the
Yeah.
brand. We had kind of a ceremony here a little over a year ago, our years of service ceremony, and we had there were like over half a dozen people that were over 40 years of service, and you don't find that. I don't care
Wow.
what company you're talking about these days. You don't find that, and you couldn't stick around for 40 something years without the leadership of somebody that you admired, trusted, respected, and knew that you had, their best interest and the company's best interest at heart. And Neil is that guy. And, different generation too. I mean, you talk about Fred and what I consider, were my grandparents same age, and, they call him the greatest generation for a reason. And I think Neil is a reflection of who he worked under, and his father, who worked for Fred as well. They just carry themselves a different way, and have a different respect for things and work and hard work, and I love watching it.
Yeah. Guys, I would highly encourage you to jump back to episode 158, where I was in Gainesville with Neil. It's called Behind the Bear. And we talk with Neil for a long time just about the history of the company, the changes that he's seen. It's still to this day one of the most listened to episodes. I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to it if you haven't. But so Jon, what was the first 4 years of Bear like for you? What have you seen Bear change in that 4 years? What's been the victories for Bear, if you will, in that first 4 years, the wins? But what have you strived to accomplish in the first 4 years, and what would you say you have accomplished in the first 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, once again, this is a reflection on the team, but I would say, coming in, we knew where our strengths were. We knew that we had a good hold at that mid price point. And I'll even say more the entry level, $4.99, $3.99 type price point. And then our bread and butter Trophy Ridge stuff, I think that where we've really pushed the envelope is giving more value at those price points. So, I mean, if you look at the last 4 years, Legit, Legend XR, this new Alaskan XT, Paradigm, Royale, and even the high end stuff, like what you get on a bow now, what it looks like, what it feels like, the accessories that come on it, even in 4 years. And it's just really getting the team on the same page, listen to our consumers, listen to our reps, and then just, putting our nose down and putting the hard work in to try to give them what they want. So I would say that really we've done an exceptional job of giving more value at the entry level without raising the price. I mean, you've seen what's happened post-COVID. Our $3.99 bow should be $6.99 now. Labor, materials, everything's just out of sight. So we've done a good job of keeping that reined in. And then I would say that we're starting to see more of that mid to upper. Like a couple of years ago, it was really Legit, Species, Cruiser. That was before Whitetail Legend Pro, Alaskan XT, Paradigm, the hunting public bow, the Adapt. So now we're looking at the majority of our business is falling between like $500 and $700 or $500 and $800. So, and it's because I think people are seeing the value in what they're getting. And there's a lot of consumers out there that, I mean, everybody wants a $1,200 bow. I get it. I don't care if it's us or somebody else, but that's not everybody's pocketbook. And with everything getting so expensive, man, you can outfit some of these $700 bows and you're into them for, less than half or a third of what you're going to end up with a loaded up, flagship. So I think we've done a good job there. And then Trophy Ridge, I mean, you look at the Digital React and taking that technology to the next level, which is one of the coolest projects I've ever been a part of. And then just really trying to take that Trophy Ridge brand, which is a leader in the accessory market. And like we talked about, keeping it cool, making it not stale. How do we give, techie guys more options? And, but in that whole entire time, never straying away from really what we are. We're not doing anything crazy and stupid or, in terms of where we spend money or where we spend development. We're going to stay the course and slowly convince the consumer this is where they need to be, and give them what they're looking for.
Yeah. And that's something, you've pushed the needle on the high end side, not only in compounds, but also in trad. I've told people, like, if you're looking to get a super high end recurve, the Fred Bear takedown is, I mean, you're cool. Buying a custom takedown. Like, you're buying a one of one because every single one of those bows is handmade right there in Gainesville made in America by hand, one by one. They're not mass produced. So you are, in fact, getting a custom hand built recurve for, you're going to be in that for $1,200 after riser and limbs. That's an insane value. And those bows shoot phenomenal. And then if you want to look at the Eichler, I mean, if wood's not your thing, you look at the Eichler. I mean, that bow, I promise you that bow will shoot against any recurve you want it to shoot against. Mm-hmm. So you've pushed the needle on not only compounds, but on traditional as well.
Yeah, and that's come in a mix of, you're not changing maybe in theory the actual bow, right? So we're staying with what works. I mean, some of that stuff is 60 years old at this point. But with wood and glass and color, materials on like the mag handle or the Eichler riser, those are a little bit more new and different. But that's how we mix it up. And that latch system on the takedown was so far ahead of its time. I mean, you're talking about, once again, something that's closing in on 60 years old. And it's so far ahead of its time and still unbelievably simple, but consistent and easy to mess with, easy to travel with. And so I think that's why it's so appealing to people. And I love the traditional business as much or more than anything in our business because it's so nostalgic, it's pretty, it's cool, it's custom. It's always it's like building custom furniture. It is really, really cool. Or guns, gun builder. It's a very challenging business when it comes to obviously craftsmen and labor and the expense of it, and doing it here in the U.S. And but I think one of the coolest pieces of our business.
100%. Guys, I don't care if you care about traditional archery at all. You need to find time to go to the Gainesville facility and just see the process, because Neil and his team take a block of wood and you can walk through every step of that process, and they're hand sanding tips and they're hand sanding grips. And every step of that process, and it's all handmade right here in the United States of America. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. I left there blown away. And what's crazy, what's really crazy, John, is, you look at the value in like a Grizzly and you're like, well, that's a really that's a great value bow. It's still handmade right there in Gainesville. Like every single, that doesn't just apply to the Fred Bear takedowns. Every bow is hand sanded, handmade right there in Gainesville. Even the $450 Grizzlies. I mean, it's insane.
Well, that's what I argue with my team. I joke we're not moving the price, but I would argue that a lot of those Montanas and Grizzlies and Kodiak Hunters, they're half the price they should be. You look at a Grizzly and a legit compound, they're really the same price. But that Grizzly, in terms of building and labor and paint and sand and silkscreen and the amount that goes into that versus, a legit that goes on a CNC machine and, we assemble and dip and stuff. But the amount of work that goes into those traditional bows for the same price, you think, holy smokes, how in the world is this thing $400? It should be $800. But Neil does a good job of making sure that we can keep it at $400.
Guys, I oftentimes say that I always have a binocular harness on my chest. What good is a binocular harness without a good set of binoculars? I am a sucker for fine Japanese glass. I love good optics. I love spending time behind it. It's just fun. It's fun to go out and look at stuff, but also good optics make spotting and looking through them a whole lot more enjoyable. Kowa Optics does it and does it better than anyone else, in my opinion. They have some of the finest Japanese glass on planet Earth. It's all I've used for the past, 8 years or so. This right here, the Kowa 55, is one of the best products ever made in the history of the universe. It is the smallest, most compact scope you can get, but it still offers phenomenal glass. It's really hard to find a spotter that is this small, this light, this compact. You can throw it in your backpack. You can leave it in your truck. It's so small and so compact, but it still offers phenomenal glass. This is one of my favorite products ever. Guys, if you're in the market for new optics, I would highly encourage you to check out Kowa Optics because they are, in my opinion, the best glass that you can buy. Go check them out. Now, one thing I want to hit on before we dive into the next, what's next for Bear, I do want to make note with this name change, and, John alluded to it. Our goal is to give people resources whether you shoot a bear or not, that you can find value in from this podcast. Obviously, like Jon said, it's our hopes that you shoot a bear. But whether you shoot one or not, like our bow building series that we just wrapped up, PJ and Caleb and those guys, they did a really good job of not making that bear specific. So whether you shoot any brand, you can learn to work on your own bow. And that's just a resource that we really strived to give you, to where you feel capable of working on your own bow. You take our Cook Wild series. That's not going away. For those of you who aren't familiar, the last Friday of every month, we do what's called Cook Wild. And I partner with one of America's top 10 chefs from the Food Network. And he takes you through step by step how to make some incredible recipes for wild game. You don't have to shoot a bear to make, a smoked venison meatloaf sandwich or a Philly's cheesesteak pizza out of bear meat, like just some crazy cool recipes. And we want to just give you that resource, whether you shoot a bear or not, to tune in and listen. A new series that we're starting next month in March is going to be called Train Wild. And we're basically just going to have people on to talk about living a healthy, happy lifestyle. Again, trying to give you resources, whether you shoot bear or not, that you can grow from and gain from. Because, like Jon alluded to, that was the vision that Fred Bear casted. And that's what we want to carry on. That archery is for everybody. This is a sport and a lifestyle that has changed so many people's lives. I mean, it's changed my life. It's changed my family. It's changed, you've seen recovering drug addicts. You've seen, military veterans struggling with PTSD, and archery changes their life. And that's what Fred Bear continued to push, was that archery is for everybody and it makes you a better person. And that's what we want to try to continue on with this podcast. So none of those specials are going to go away. We will still do 101 type series. So we'll still do like Turkey 101 and Deer 101, where we're teaching you the basics of how to hunt those species. But we also want to hit more in-depth stuff and kind of carry out the legacy and history of bear archery. So, Jon, what's next for Bear? What's the next 4 years look like?
Man, I wish I had that crystal ball. I think we've got a strategic plan. We've got things that we want to accomplish, everything from, there's still some missing pieces to our, I'll call it our assortment, our product lines, the things we don't do, that whether that comes through, us building a brand or acquisition. I think we've got some stuff on that, that forefront. And then I think that what you saw this year, I think that, call it the integrated features on the Alaskan XT and the Paradigm. How can we continue that? How can we build more value on our youth segment? Traditional, we've got a ton of stuff that we want to do there, but that's one of those things that, we sell everything we build. So it's not like we're struggling for ideas or for stuff there. So that's one of those things we've got to figure out how to be able to expand what we do in traditional. So I mean, we've got every little piece of this thing. I would say we do have a strategic plan. I think that we continue to look at the high end and find out, in my mind, what would take a paradigm shift in technology to really open people's eyes. Because I don't care what brand it is, ours or anybody else's. The high end bow business hasn't changed a lot.
Right.
When I came into this industry, there was a big shift, 06, 07. With limb technology. And when we went to this heavily preloaded limb and speed went crazy. But in the last 5 to 7 years, it's all widgets and smoke and mirrors. Nothing bad. The bows still continue to feel better, but we're back to 330 feet per second bows that weigh 5 pounds that, 80, 90% let off. Nothing has really changed there. And I've said all along is until you can, get a competitive advantage or you can, change physics, it's going to continue doing this. So we're continuing to look at that. Bow fishing is another thing that we want to continue to improve on and give some new features, some new quality, some new products. And then outside of just product, I think from a team, internally, I think that the Bear brand has been more visible in the last, call it 4 or 5 years than it has been in a long time. And I don't want that to stop. I want to make sure that, we're on the forefront, whether it's, part of education or conservation or events or family things or whatever. I mean, we do a lot of different stuff. I want to make sure that the brand is visible and that, people are aware of what we have to offer and why I say my ultimate goal here is, and I've said this a bunch of times, is that I talk to people and the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, oh, I used to shoot a bear. My first bow was a bear.
Yeah.
I've heard it 1,000 times. And my ultimate goal here is that conversation isn't my first bow was a bear and now I'm shooting X, or I upgraded to X. Like, we have the product. I don't care if it was a whitetail hunter or you're now in the current generation that's a legit. Like, when you upgrade from a legit, you say nothing but good things about the legit, and it was the best. We killed all these animals, and it was a great shooting bow, and I upgraded. Well, man, we've got 40 other SKUs in this line that you can consider an upgrade. Stick with us, give us a shot. And if it's just not the bow for you, I totally understand, but don't make it based on what you think it is or what you've heard it is. And I think that's my ultimate goal here is perception. Yep, absolutely. So we got a lot of work to do. And, I hope that I'm here in this seat, as we do this, but a lot of plans, a lot of big plans.
Well, and that's something that, just exactly what you hit on. My wife is by no means can tell you about her bow. Like, she can't tell you what weight she's pulling. She can't tell you her draw length. She can't tell you, whether it's a binary cam or a hybrid cam or a single cam. She can't tell you any of that stuff. But what I can tell you is she started with a legit. And, actually years ago, she started with an apprentice too, long before my days at Bear. Started having kids, and then she couldn't have a bow anymore, just didn't have time to hunt and shoot. So we started her off with the legit. And when it was time to upgrade, I put a Legend XR in her hand, and her eyes got big, and she goes, that shoots way better. Like, that's a massive upgrade. And it's exactly what you alluded to just now. And yeah, we'll upgrade her from a XR one day to a Persist, maybe, but that was a big upgrade for her. And it was an upgrade, a noticeable upgrade. It was faster. Sure. It was quieter. It was less hand shock. She could noticeably shoot further because of how much faster it was. And she could notice that upgrade. And so, I think what you said is exactly right. Your first bow might have been a bear, but your next bow can be a bear as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if we've done something, I always say I can talk to the guy that doesn't, if you had a bad experience with a product or with a situation or a customer service situation, I totally understand it and give us an opportunity. But if it's product related, I always say, I am loyal to brands that have treated me well, and I always try to give them the first right of refusal,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, dance with the girl you brought. That's my opinion.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely,
and again, guys, I don't want you to hear this and because I understand, there will be people out there that pick up a bear and it's just not for them. The grip doesn't feel right, or I get that, because I've picked up other, high end bows that people love, and I'm like, I don't like it at all. Not that it's a bad bow, it's just not for me. Mm-hmm. So you will sure. There will be people who pick up a bow and it's just not for them. That's not what we're saying. But just don't write off Bear because, well, it was my first bow. But we make flagship bows too, and bows that will perform at every level. And I don't know how much you can say or how much you want to say, but you mentioned, missing out on certain products. What do you feel that Bear or the entire family there, what do you feel like is missing from that family?
I would say some of it's internal. We already have it, but I think that there's opportunity for growth and improvement and, additional features. So if you look at some of our product line, you look in the rest category, right? We built a limb driven rest this year, both for integrate and for regular. That was something that was missing from our line that, and I'm a big proponent. When I came in here, I was a big proponent of limb driven rests. I like their simplicity.
Yeah.
The thing I like about them the most is that it removes almost all the error in terms of setup. And I don't care if it's in a shop or in a person's house. It removes a large portion of that. So that was a piece, an example. I think that the expansion in our release category, I think we've got some good releases in there. We've got some that probably aren't as popular and not as strong. I think there's some expansion there, even on a more high end, as we work in engineering and we work on materials and, how do we give some better offerings there? I mean, we drove the sight category from, call it $100 React type sights all the way through to $400, including the new Swift, drive style sights. I think the same thing can happen on the release line. I think that, the stabilizers continue to do well, but I've got some ideas there. So I think that internally there's some categories I would say we're just need expansion. And then say outside of that, I think there's some opportunity for us with some of the brands we have that, we're missing. I mean, I'd love to say that we could complete our bow and arrow category with the one word of that we don't have, which is arrow. So I think that, there's an opportunity there. I think that we get things from customers all the time, and even dealers that say, hey man, you guys ought to be in this piece of the business, or you guys ought to build a case, or you ought to build a backpack, so we look at all that stuff, but it's got to be fundamental to what we do. We're not just going to start throwing things at the wall. So, but I would say the arrow piece is a big one that we talk about a lot inside this building, and then just some little pieces that we're missing within the current items that we have, I think is a big piece.
I love that you hit on the Propel, because that, dude, out of every product line you guys have, that's something that you get and you hold in your hand and you're like, how in the crap are they selling this to me for $100? It's an unbelievable rest. And I would say, and I feel like I can say this without upsetting anybody, I would have said my favorite limb-driven rest up until this year was a rest that was produced by Arcus. I feel like the Trophy Taker was a phenomenal SmackDown. The SmackDown Pro is a phenomenal limb-driven rest. Yep. But with this Propel, it's the best limb-driven rest, and it's $100. Like, that is mind-blowing to me. Absolutely mind-blowing.
It's simple. And I think that's the difference in the cable-driven and limb-driven, is that I never could understand. I understand a little bit of the cable-driven where prices, vary. But when it comes to limb-driven, it's a very simple technology. You want something that one holds together, but I wanted something that was fairly small footprint, easy to install, simple. And you look at the market and you see, $199, $250, $279. I'm thinking, man, if we can build something and keep it somewhere around that $100 mark, and then, expansion there, build a micro version. And yes, it's going to creep up a little bit in price, but if we can offer that to the customer, and then tell them why limb-driven rests are good and why there's an advantage there, we're going to kill it. And man, since we launched that thing in October, the sales have proven that, and we're chasing those orders pretty hard right now.
Yeah, I love. Well, and I'll be honest with you, for 9 years I went back to Whisker Biscuit because I didn't want to shoot a cable-driven. Nothing against like the Sync line, but I just or the Evolution before that, or the Revolution. What was it called? The one that flipped over. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Revolution.
Yeah.
Revolution.
Nothing against that or the Sync line. But I'm a cable driven guy, and so I just would as soon shoot a Whisker Biscuit over a cable driven, or shoot a Whisker Biscuit over a cable driven.
Yeah.
And when I saw the Propel come out, I was excited about it. It looks good. It looks clean. But then you see the way it functions, and oh my gosh. And you're right. It absolutely is simple. Anybody can set that rest up. Simple. And, I was at church camp. I was away from my computer. I had no means to do anything. And Chuck Adams calls me and he says, hey, I just got this Propel in. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I don't know what to do. And I'm like, Chuck, listen, super easy, bolt it on, and then tie that string tight to your limb. And he's like, that's it? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. And he started shooting and he calls me back. He's like, this is awesome. And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's so easy. Like, he's
not the only one,
man.
I mean, he's not the only one. There's been, since my time at Arcus, I bumped into more guys in this industry that have been around for a long time that, I talk to them about limb driven, and I kind of get this, and then we start digging into it and they're like, yeah, but what about the rest of it? I'm like, that's it, man. Like, you on a hunt, you pull the thing, let's say it gets tangled up, the cord comes off, whatever, tie it back on. There's no draw board, there's no bow press, there's nothing. If you're not going to shoot a Whisker Biscuit, if you're shooting a drop away, me personally, this is the way to do it.
Bingo.
And that, once again, personal preference, but I love it.
Well, and I would hate to be the guy, and everybody talks about, well, there's a massive cable running down your bow that can get snagged on anything and everything. And I'm like, yeah, but if it does, I can fix it in the field. if your cable driven dies in the field, you're up the creek without a paddle. Like you're in trouble, my friend. So I can literally have a propel set up ready to rock and roll, and say the whole rest just shatters in two. I can have another in my backpack that's already set up and tuned, exactly center shot how I need it to be, and all I got to do is bolt it on and tie it back on, and I'm still hunting. Like the simplicity of it and the function, the way that it functions, is just incredible, man. Really good job on the propel to your entire team.
Yeah, they did a good job on that one, so I appreciate that. Yeah, outside of that, in terms of little holes in the product line, I mean, I think that some of the things we did this year with Integrate and with the propel, and then I look at another good example that I know Neil's wanted to do for a while, and he and I got together this year was, you talk about the Bear traditional line and the fact that, yes, Grizzly's a very reasonable entry price, but it's not kid entry price and it's not kid size. And I think the little Bear was a perfect example of, getting a kid into a USA made traditional bow, branding them early, giving them a bow that's just like dad's. And to add to it, it's now an heirloom collectible piece. I mean, I ordered them for my kids because these are pieces that they can hand down, they can hang on the wall, whatever. And they just have that sentimental value. And I mean, $199 for a USA built traditional bow that looks incredible. Coin, silk screen, the whole thing. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, wooden handmade recurve for your kid. Like, dude, you're absolutely right. And I heard it said somebody was at ATA and they were trying to think of a bow. They couldn't think of the name or the company, and they were like, but it was, I had this bow when I was a kid, and it was actually like a well-built wooden custom recurve. And I was like, man, that's cool. If only somebody would do that. And then I walked over to the Bear booth and I'm like, check out this bow they just released this year. And they were like, dude, are you serious? Like, that's incredible. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Cause I was touring the Gainesville facility right when that was kind of in the works. And so Neil was showing it to me and I'm like, dude, my kids are going to be hyped.
Yeah. Just a cool piece, collectible and does what it's supposed to do. And really nothing competes with it on the market. That one, there's nothing USA made, but most of that import, $139 to $199 stuff doesn't have the same appeal, look, value, nostalgia that this bow does. So we're excited about it.
So for somebody who's just written off the Bear brand, maybe it is that mentality of, dude, I had one way back in the day and I killed everything in the world with it, but I've upgraded, I've moved on. That was decades ago. What do you say to that guy? To encourage them, to kind of get them to revisit it. What do you say to that person?
This is funny because this is a conversation I have a lot, and I will say that no company, most companies at least, are the same company they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I think if you look online and look through our mix, read the reviews, get on the chat rooms and see what people are saying about these different price points, give it a shot. Walk into a shop and shoot one. If a buddy's got one, take the opportunity. And I mean, a perfect example of this is, Dylan, you're probably too young for this, but I'm probably slightly older, but you probably don't remember when Ford released their initial "Have you driven a Ford lately?" campaign. And this would have been, I don't know if this was in the 80s, maybe. But that tagline lived with them for a long time. But the reason they did it was because Ford was struggling. People had moved to other trucks, and it was like, hey, have you driven a Ford lately? Which means like they knew people had a Ford at one time. They'd walked away from it, and they were trying to get them back to look at the brand. And every brand in our industry has gone through those ebbs and flows. And I don't care if it's the one PSE and us and Hoyt, and these companies have gone through those times where people either they stray, they do something else, they look away from it. And then technology changes, people in leadership roles change, the product changes. There's all sorts of things that happen. But I always say, it's just like Ford, have you shot a bear lately? I mean, it's simple. Yeah. Whitetail too. I mean, good Lord, we're talking about, 40, 50 years of difference here. Bows have changed. So if you're judging it on the one that you tried in the 80s or something, good luck. I mean, you can pick up something that's 5 years old. It's going to feel different.
might I say, even if you tried them in 2010 or 2012, because there was a time, and I've been with Bear now, I guess going on 6-7 years. But there was a time that I remember, and just like you said, I grew up with a bear. That was my first bow, shot my first animal with a bear. I loved bear. But then there was a time where you're right, there was a lull, and I'm like, it's just not the bow for me. And so I moved away from it and there was a span of time where the bows just didn't perform. They weren't a great shooting bow. And I tell people, like, and I can tell you where the switch was. It was really like for me at least, like the Kuma 30, where things started really changing. I'm like, dude, that's a shooter. Like they're making strides. And then you went from the Kuma and it's just built up, and you got the Redemption and it just kept getting better and better. And now I tell people 8 years ago, the top end bears didn't compete with the top end of everything else. But You're to a point now where nobody can shoot a persist next to any other flagship bow. And again, you still might choose another bow over the persist, but nobody can say that bow doesn't perform right alongside the other ones.
Yeah, I would say we live in a time now where a lot of that stuff has to be given. Yes, materials have changed a lot in the last 10 years. Companies can get in lulls when it comes to engineering or design, but it should be a given now. If you're spending X amount from any of these 4 or 5 companies, you should get a good bow. So now it comes down to what little features does it have? What feels good for you? And then I'll also say, as much as this, we'll tout this a little bit, then it goes back to, okay, if I'm making a decision, what company's been around for 90 years? They're not going anywhere.
Bingo.
Who's got customer service? Pick up the phone. I helped a guy with a site, a Digital React site this morning, that I caught his message or his post on Facebook last night in one of the Bow Hunt America groups. I'm like, send him a message immediately, like, hey, call me at 8:30 in the morning. We'll get this taken care of. Andrew and I got it taken care of this morning in 3 minutes. But when you're looking at a product, who's going to be around? Who's going to be continuing to push the envelope on technology? Who can you pick up a phone or send an email to and get taken care of? So you're as much buying from people. And I say that about our dealers. They buy from our reps a lot of times, not just from Bear. And it's because of the relationships, and they know they're taken care of and they're represented correctly. And I think the same thing goes with a brand. I buy brands personally. If I'm spending, I'm not talking about groceries. I'm talking about, things that you put your dollars towards. I don't care if it's vehicles or grills or coolers or whatever it is, golf clubs. You put your money towards brands that you have been around. They've got a reputation. And if I've got a problem, I can pick up the phone or send an email. It's going to get taken care of. So I tell people that all the time. Give Bear a shot. If we did something wrong or didn't take care of you, my number and name is out on the internet everywhere. Call me, send me a message, and we're going to make it right. So,
yeah, and that's what and I like the Shield logo. The Shield logo is cool, but that traditional logo, like that's been around for 90 years, you can't look at that and just not be. And I don't care if you're a traditional archer or not. Like, you have to look at that and just feel some sort of allegiance to that history and that legacy and that innovation and that, taking strides that nobody thought were even possible at that time. And that is, it's a brand with just such history. And I look at who supports me as a hunter. Not only who makes a great product, but who is actually supporting my rights as a hunter. And everybody that listens to this knows I'm the marketing director for Pope & Young. But I don't know if you guys know this, but when you buy a new Bear bow and you register that bow, Bear Archery buys your first year membership to Pope & Young. Like, they are showing you, guys, listen, we not only support you with the products we produce, but we want to help you protect your rights for future bow hunts by signing you up as a member to the Bow Hunting Organization of North America. Bear Archery has always, long time, been a supporter of Pope & Young with their conservation dollars. And that's what, Pope & Young's, what's the word I'm looking for here? Trust is the Fred Bear Society, because Fred Bear was the first one that made a sizable donation to the future of bow hunting and conservation. And so our trust fund is the Fred Bear Society. Guys, they support you not only with products, but as a hunter. They want to keep you out there longer, and they want to continue to support your rights. So, man, if you can't feel pride with that brand and what they do for you and what they've done for you for 90 years, I don't know what you can feel pride in.
No, and we try to align ourselves with companies like Pope and Young, and the fact that you won't see really any of our marketing dollars spent with people or organizations or opportunities that don't align with who we are or who we think our company is or who Fred Bear was. We put a lot of words in his mouth and say this is what he would have wanted or this is what he would have done. We don't 100% know that for sure, but we have a pretty good feeling based on his track record. And so when it comes to organizations like Pope and Young or just conservation in general, or people that really are working toward, I don't care if it's S3DA, First Hunt, like trying to get people into the outdoors, preserve and protect the resources and the opportunity, we're going to be aligned with it. And we put a lot of dollars towards that and make it known. So,
well, and that's something that's one of the coolest parts about what I get to do is because I represent, both Pope and Young and Bear Archery. There's a lot of guys inside the Pope and Young organization that were friends with Fred. Some of our founding members are still around, and the guy that taught me how to shoot a recurve, his name is Harv Ebers. He was a personal friend of Fred, and he went on hunts with Fred and hung out with Fred. He's got postcards all around his house from Fred, and just hearing the stories and the history and and not only the history of Fred, but the history of what Fred did for conservation and what Fred did to support the efforts of furthering bow hunting in North America with Pope and Young. It's just so cool, man. It really is. And, it's one of those deals where you just can't help but feel some sort of, this is 90 years of history, and I want to be part of that history,
Absolutely. And I mentioned it earlier, the manufacturers in this industry, the older manufacturers, the guys that have been around this thing for a while, they owe a lot to Fred Bear and what he was. And like I said, a lot of them considered they were friends. But those companies wouldn't be in business. They wouldn't have even been started had it not been for the groundwork that was set there by Fred and just then archery and bow hunting, two separate pieces there. I mean, archery was kind of existing, but bow hunting really is a relatively new concept in terms of what we look at it, not, Native American hunting, but and Fred was once again on the early stages of trying to get seasons and opportunities and, weapon changes. And it's really cool to think that, we're not that far removed from, 75 years of some of that stuff, 75, 80 years from now.
Yeah. I've got a nephew. His first name is Bear. And this was still when he was born. It was still during Alex's time, the past marketing director. And when my nephew was born, I was holding him in the hospital, and I sent Alec a picture, and I said, "This is my new nephew. His name is Bear." Said his parents said you have 30 days to send him a bow, or they're going to change his name to Hoyt. and Alec sent him a bow, so that kid will always have a bear in his hand. But that type of thing is just. Man, and we're going back to just that kind of heart tie to the history, but it's just so cool to represent a brand that's been around for 90 years and that continues to move the envelope. So, guys, just keep doing what you're doing because you're making a change. Like you are, like when you walk around ATA, even you're walking around and you get to the Bear booth, and it's almost just like you can tell, like this is the iconic brand.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Like I said, it's a tall task. It's a lot of, I consider it a lot of pressure, but also an honor to be a part of it and to have this team and lead this team. And there's no other brand in this industry that does that, in my opinion. We've got a lot of cool brands, but nothing to this level. And so that's why I consider it a privilege and hope that we do it proud.
Yeah. Well, I would say that I believe you guys are. So keep doing what you're doing. And I'm excited to be on the ship, being steered by yourself. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see the next 4 years and just what Bear can accomplish and what Bear can continue to change and do. So what, did you find a lot of success this fall? Before we go, I got to hear about, all the animals you killed.
So no, all is a short list. So really in the last few years, so I have to say when I was a rep, I had a whole lot more time to hunt, and I mean, I never missed a year where I wasn't out west at least once, and didn't go on another hunt. Whitetail hunted most of the fall, either while I was traveling, Africa here and there. The last few years, and a lot of that's not just the job; it's family life. My boys, my oldest two, which are 16 and 14, almost to be 17. Football and basketball, but especially in the fall, football dominates sometimes 3 to 4 nights of our week. And to be honest with you, that's as much as I love to hunt and I love to fish. My family is of utmost importance to me, and being in those kids' lives is huge. And so I'll trade it for now. There'll be a day when we try to do a little bit of it together. They're big fishermen, so we normally opt for saltwater fishing and doing that kind of stuff just because it's a little easier to connect all the dots. But we hunt together, do all that stuff. But so this last fall, I didn't get into a tree stand until the week before Christmas. Went out to Colorado with our good friend Fred Eichler there, and have been able to do that the last 2 years right before Christmas, and took one of our guys here from the office this year and had a great time. Shot a nice buck there. The second to last day, which I've had success out there both the last 2 years. But more than anything, it is the perfect recharge for me as we're winding down the year right before Christmas. And Fred's a lot of fun. I mean, he and I have a lot of fun together, and I enjoy that part of it. If I didn't kill anything, it wouldn't be that big a deal. But I've been lucky enough the last 2 years to kill really nice bucks. So that was the extent of my 2023 hunting season, which is pathetic. So I got bigger plans, hopefully, for this year, and then once we get maybe one or two of these out of football, we've got some plans to do some bigger hunts. So we'll see. And I assume you had more chances than I did. I'm feeling.
I would trade any buck just to share camp with Fred. I mean, that'd be so much fun, dude. He's a riot. I'm lucky enough. My kids haven't gotten to the sports dominate everything age. I've got a 5 and 7 year old, and I do a lot of hunting with the 5-year-old. He's my boy. And so, I'm actually taking him on a bear hunt this year with me. We're going to sit in a tree stand together in Idaho and try to kill bears. So, he's to that age where, school's not super, I don't want to say school's not important, but we can skip a day of kindergarten. Yeah. We can skip a day of kindergarten to go on a bear hunt. So we're still having fun, but that's kind of the sucky part about the industry we're in, though, is we're friends with all these guys who are killing a bunch of stuff. I almost just hate Shane Mowry this time of year, because he'll just, like, it's every 2 days. He's like, killed a bison, killed an elk, killed 7 more deer, shot, 4 bears. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to see it because I don't get to hunt as much as you.
He lives in the right part of the world, and his family's integrated into that lifestyle too, which helps. But he sent me a message over the weekend, and there was a picture or something, and I gave him, I was giving him a hard time, but I told him, I said I was pretty sure at this point he was just pulling pictures off the internet and then saying that he killed it, and he didn't know how to take me there for a few minutes, but he's a hunting machine. And I live vicariously through buddies of mine in the industry that have the fall to hunt and the winter to hunt. And one of these, I've been there, and so I can't say that I've not had that opportunity. My life has just changed, but I'll get it back, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, guys, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank you for listening. All this time, we've been doing the podcast for a while now. This is episode 187, I believe. So we've been doing it for a long time. So I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you, Jon, for everything you do. I'm excited about this change. I think the podcast will see some growth. I'm excited about some ideas we have moving forward, and just to continue to help grow the sport of archery and the brand of Bear Archery. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. Jon, thank you so much for coming on. And I can say this with all certainty, man. I'm excited for the next 4 years, and can't wait to see what you and the team can do over there.
Well, we are too, and we appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat. And we're looking forward to 2024 and seeing what's in store for the podcast, and recap on all the things that we're going to do this year.
Guys, if you're a traditional archer and you have not checked out Three Rivers Archery, what are you waiting for? Three Rivers Archery is your one-stop shop for all things traditional archery. They have the largest in-stock selection of traditional archery equipment anywhere. Same-day shipping, very, very, very knowledgeable. Listen, I use Three Rivers all the time. If I've got a question on tuning, if I've got a question on broadheads, if I've got a question on brace height or anything like that, I use Three Rivers for everything. They know the products because they use the products. Three Rivers Archery is by far the gold standard when it comes to traditional archery. So guys, if you're just getting into traditional archery, I would encourage you to use Three Rivers as a resource for knowledge and understanding and growing and learning, and as a place to get all those products that you're going to be needing as you take this journey. Guys, thank you so much. Y'all have a fantastic week.